Do you put your family first? Do you lock your doors at night? Do you have a fence in your backyard to keep your property safe, or, to make sure that your dogs don't get out, or to make sure that when you're in the kitchen cooking or when you're outside barbecuing, that your kids can just play and that you'll know that they will be safe? I was talking to my producer, Cal, about this just before I came on to talk to you. And he said something that is really true. We don't lock the doors because we don't like the people who are outside. We lock doors to protect the people who are inside our house. That is a family first policy. What about an America first policy? There are a lot of sacrifices that we make to keep our nation strong and healthy when it is strong and healthy, to protect it from the inside, to protect it from those that want to do harm to it from the outside. And when we have a president in office and an administration, because this is not President Biden just working all by himself, otherwise we would still probably be hearing about his uncle being eaten by cannibals on some island, or was it his uncle eating the cannibals? I can't even remember. We would still be hearing that. This is about an agenda, an America Last agenda in an administration that does not put our nation first. It is the reason why the intelligence apparatus, when President Trump was in office, targeted him with all of their might and continue to do so to this very day. To this very day. It is the reason why we have to have people in our bureaucracy that we can trust again. And how do we get those people into our government? People that will be working for us. I say this all the time. We do not work for our government. Our government needs to work for us. And if they are working for us, they better put us first. That's the least that they could do. Their job is to not only secure the border, but to ensure that we have a foreign policy in place that takes care of our nation, that considers our nation in all of its aspects. How do we protect our people? How do we create a nation that is a world leader again? Because we're not right now. Because China and Russia and North Korea and Iran and other nations that are our adversaries are seeing our weakness and they are circling the waters. And there are people within this government, in our government, and you know it as well as I do, based on the evidence and the facts that have been laid before you, that do not put us first. And in fact, I believe they sell us out. They have to be removed. We need leaders that will take care of us like we take care of our families, like all good Americans, like all of you do when you lock the door at night, when you make sure that the bills are paid, when you ensure that the house is clean. All of those things that we do to protect our families, we need leaders that want to do that same thing for us, right? We need leaders that don't listen to foreign special interests or corrupt lobbyists, but instead say, hey, what do American citizens need? What do American citizens require? And put our needs first. This is the America First idea that President Trump popularized on his way to the White House in 2016 when I covered him during his campaign. It is the reason why the American public, I would get to Wisconsin, I would go to Michigan, I would go everywhere I traveled where the president was. There were thousands of people in line thanking him for putting them first. And it is the reason why you're seeing so many Americans right now saying, whoa, wait a minute. Even people that voted for President Biden in the past are saying, wait a minute. What kind of policy has been happening in this country over the last 4 years? Remember when President Obama said, we need to lead from behind? Folks, that is exactly what they're doing, except they're not leading. This administration just wants us to be behind. The simple phrase, America First, has profound applications for finance, foreign policy, economics, intelligence agencies, and so many other parts governing our country. And those are the kind of people that we need. Taking an America First approach to key issues, guys, of governance is the master key to understanding why America is struggling and what we must do to get back on top. Joining me today is Fred Fleitz of the America First Policy Institute. It's phenomenal, a phenomenal NGO, and he will lay out for you what Donald Trump must do in his second term to get America right back on track. You do not want to miss this one. Hey, folks, but first, Goldco. Are you concerned about the endless flood of illegal immigration at the southern border? Yep. How about the $1 trillion being added to the national debt every 100 days? It's no wonder thousands of hardworking, patriotic Americans, including myself, are learning how to protect and diversify their retirement savings with precious metals. That's why I've partnered with the top-rated company Goldco. Listen to this current offer. Get a free 2024 wealth protection kit and learn how to possibly get $10,000 in bonus silver as a listener of the show while supplies last. What do I say all the time? Diversify all your money. Protect your family's financial future and freedom. Get started today at Sara, SARA-likesgold.com or call 855-823-GOLD. Get your free gold kit from Goldco and learn how to get $10,000 in bonus silver. Sara, SARA-likesgold.com or call 1-855-823-4653. That's Sara, SARA-likesgold.com. or call 855-823-GOLD. Very happy to have Fred Fleitz on the show today. I think this is the first time you've been on my show. Fred, very excited to have you here. You're the vice chair of the America First Policy Institute Center for American Security. You serve there with many people that I love and consider my friends. He served as well as a National Security Council chief of staff in the Trump administration. And prior to that, Fleitz held a U.S. national security positions for 25 years with the Central Intelligence Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the State Department, the House Intelligence Committee staff. And you're the editor, and that's why I have you here, of a new book by America First Press. It's called An American First Approach to National Security. And I absolutely agree with you. Thank you so much for being on the show, Fred.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. Let's start out with the basics. What does it mean to be America First?
That's the question we start off with. And that's the subject of Chapter 1 by my colleague, Keith Kellogg. Kellogg served as National Security Advisor in the Trump administration. He was with President Trump when he carried out America First approaches to national security. It first means putting the American people first when making decisions concerning national security, signing treaty, sending troops abroad, sending weapons abroad. It also means a competent and decisive American president who uses U.S. military force prudently and keeps us out of unnecessary wars. It means a strong U.S. military. It means working in alliances, but making sure that members of alliances, that they carry their weight in these alliances. It's not just the United States. America First is not isolationism. It is not America alone, but it is a strategy to advance our national security, but keeping the interests of the American people first and keeping us out of unnecessary wars.
I think that's very important. I think that's important to debunk the rumors that, America First policy is about isolationism. It's about, not getting involved in other countries. That's not what we're talking about. I mean, we're there for our allies because our allies should be there for us, right?
And we hear this over and over again, the Washington Post and in National Review, that America First is isolationism. It's the same backward approach to foreign policy of radicals of the 1930s. But if you look at President Trump's foreign policy, it was a robust diplomatic effort across the board to deal with North Korea, to deal with our allies in Europe, to deal with China, to deal with Russia. It clearly was not isolationism. It wasn't America walling itself off. And people who claim that, I mean, they're either lying or they're just intellectually lazy, because it's clearly not true.
I was there during the summit that President Trump held with Kim Jong-un. I was there with Fox News,
Oh, wow.
and yeah, it was fascinating, and it was a moment in history that I thought was absolutely incredible that I could even be there to witness it. And I was so impressed. A lot of people became very critical during that time of like, how is President Trump dealing with these dictators? What is he doing? But he was brilliant at handling, Kim Jong-un. He was brilliant at dealing with them on a very different level than what we had seen in the past. And it made the world much safer. It was very strategic on his part, I think.
Well, America First is not the old way of doing things. It's revolutionary. It bucks the globalists who say you just can't do certain things because we've always done it in a certain way. Personal diplomacy, Kim Jong-un, no one had attempted that before. The same thing for moving our embassy to Jerusalem, something other presidents talked about, but the globalists said it's a bad idea. Mr. President, you can't do it. Well, President Trump looked at things that needed to be done. And he said, these things are in America's interest. And I don't care what the UN says or what the globalists say or what State Department careers say. My instincts are based on consultations with advisors I trust that this is the best move for our country and for the American people.
I think, you bring up a very good point, and something that's been coming up a lot lately in the news, of course, is Israel. And, they're a very close ally of the United States. It's a very difficult situation, obviously, all the way around. What we witnessed on October 7th was just horrific. And the argument that I usually make, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, is like when the United States was attacked by Al-Qaeda in 2001 on 9/11, we immediately went into full gear. We had not seen an attack on our nation like that since World War II and Pearl Harbor. We, directly, our president, then President Bush, said, we are not going to put up with this. We invaded. Of course, we went into Iraq. We went into Afghanistan. Nobody told us how we needed to handle this. Although I think we should have gone from Tora Bora into Pakistan. We should have been able to cross that line and get bin Laden early on. I felt like it was 20 years, too long of a war. But you see a lot of people, and especially in the Biden administration right now, making demands on our allies that they don't make on our enemies. And I'm not talking about how someone personally feels and whether the United States should fund or give weapons. I'm talking about how is it that this executive branch under President Biden feels as though they can direct another nation on how they should defend themselves against what was a horrific terrorist attack on their country, a declaration of war in their country.
Look, President Biden's policies towards Israel have been disgraceful. The U.S. will sometimes have differences with a close ally. If that's the case, we discuss those things in private. We don't lecture and try to pressure them through the press, through leaks. I was in Israel a few weeks ago with General Kellogg, and the Israeli officials told us that sometimes they hear about Biden administration ideas to end the war from the press, ideas that they didn't tell the Israeli government about directly. This is not the way that you deal with an ally. But beyond that, Ellie Conahan, a brilliant woman who was the deputy special envoy for anti-Semitism in the Trump administration at the State Department, she wrote a brilliant chapter on America First and the Middle East. And she makes it clear that America First means standing with Israel, recognizing and supporting our historic relationship with one of our most important allies. She says there should be no daylight between us and the Israeli people. And she makes the point that we shouldn't do this not just because this is the right thing to do, but it is in our strategic interest, because the stronger and more secure Israel is, the more stable the Middle East is. And that lowers the chance that we will have to send our soldiers to fight there or send our weapons there, which means our taxpayers have to pay for them. So there's a lot of good reasons for doing this, and why Biden would advocate policies that seem to be favoring Hamas. We know why this is. He's worried about being reelected because of his radical left. He is throwing Israel under the bus to win votes in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. And as I said, it's just shameful.
It is shameful. And Ellie is a friend of mine. She's been on the show numerous times. We were in Israel together. We both had the amazing opportunity to sit down with the prime minister and speak with him, as well as Ron Dermer, our former ambassador. And, it was such an emotional as well as intellectual experience, to be able to sit in front of the prime minister after Israel suffered such a horrendous not just the attack, but such a horrendous backlash from the global community. And it was almost stunning, that an ally, our only true ally in the Middle East, which I believe is Israel. I know we have Saudi Arabia. I know we have others. And I think the Abraham Accords were an example of building bridges with the right nations in the Middle East. But looking at what happened with Israel, why do you think it's not just Biden? And of course, he is certainly pandering to the voters in Michigan and Dearborn, Michigan, and other. And I don't even know why, because I think it's throwing the baby out with the bathwater. What are you gaining from this? You're not really getting voters that are going to be substantial for your reelection, in my opinion. But why do you think there's been this huge backlash? And how would we handle it as America First when it comes to Israel? Why do you think that is? I mean, we talk about anti-Semitism, Jew hate, and also the failure of our educational systems and that globally to really understand the Middle East and that part of the world.
Well, two things. There's been growing anti-Semitism on the left for a long time. I think this is a ticking time bomb, and it recently went off. And I've been writing about this for some time, that the Democrats have to do more to combat this, that there's radical anti-Semitic, anti-Israel professors on college campuses. Mm-hmm. Major donors to universities are doing nothing about it. College administrators are tolerating and hiring these people. But let's go deeper than that to talk about, where does this hostility towards Israel from the Biden administration come from? And we first saw it during the Obama administration. Obama was very anti-Israel, and his administration took the perverted view that somehow we could embrace Iran as a partner for peace in the Middle East, and we could agree to a peace deal, a nuclear deal with Iran that Israel thought was a disaster and endangered its security interests, because we could somehow appease Iran and somehow get it to work with us to promote stability in the Middle East. That was wrong. Iran's behavior got worse right after that deal was agreed to. There are Obama people all throughout the Biden administration. Biden was part of the Obama administration. And I think at the end of the day, this is a core belief of Biden and his people, that we can work with Iran. If we just give them enough inducements, enough concessions, somehow we can bring them over to work with us. It's wrong. It's not going to work. It's been a failure through this administration. And I can tell you that if Donald Trump comes back into office, we will see maximum pressure back. We will start enforcing oil sanctions against Iran, which has given them over $72 billion of extra revenue through last fall. It'll be a very different approach. And I think, we have to either bankrupt Iran or allow it to continue to be a state sponsor of terrorism that may eventually fire missiles successfully at Israel. It's a very stark choice.
Yeah, that's where I was just going to go with you, because I know you're an expert in the nuclear field as well. You understand Iran and the threat that they pose to the world. Also, the biggest state sponsor of terrorism globally. And they pose a threat not only to the Jewish people, but to our nation directly, And I think that's a great explanation of why an America First policy is so necessary when it comes to supporting our allies. When Trump began using America First in the 2016 campaign, and I'm going to take you back there, it was an instant success for the American people. It quickly became associated with all of his policies. Trump supporters love the slogan, and it resonates. And I think we're starting to see it, like even with people that had once supported Biden and the Democrats, they're now coming to this kind of idea, this policy that says, wait a minute, we got to put our nation first. And because they've seen how far back our nation has gone under this administration. Talk a little bit about that in your book.
Well, I mean, the brilliance of the America First approach is that it's doing what every other nation does. When they make decisions for their national security, they think of their country first. But we've had Republican and Democratic presidents who have signed treaties and sent troops abroad for some broad liberal ideological purpose that was not in the interest of the American people. The Paris Climate Accord is the best example of this. That is a terrible treaty. I might add, it was not negotiated as a treaty, so the Senate wouldn't have a chance to ratify it, even though other nations did. Basically, the Obama administration went around the American people for that treaty. And the Biden administration re-entered it. As you know, President Trump withdrew from that terrible agreement. This is an agreement that would do enormous damage to the American people, to American businesses. But the globalists love it because it pursues the radical green agenda. And we're all seeing with Americans not buying electric vehicles right now that agenda is not doing too well. But the objective here is to put the interests of the American people first, that this is not isolationism. And I think it's resonating with the American people. When they look at Biden's foreign policy agenda, what is Joe Biden's national security priority? Climate change. Climate change. Not China, not Iran, not Russia, not terrorism. This naive approach has hurt our reputation on the global stage very badly. The Chinese are happy when we send legions of diplomats to them to talk about climate change. China's not going to do anything about climate change. They're building more coal-powered electric plants. They'd rather talk about that than talk about Taiwan or fentanyl or all the other legitimate security concerns that we should be raising with China.
Well, and they're still considered a developing nation, which is so bizarre. I mean, they love that status. They don't have to do anything. They just have to watch us. It's kind of like Russia as well. You know, the Russians, Vladimir Putin is very happy to see our environmentalist groups get tons of money. You know, in fact, there's always been rumors that, you know, some of the funding comes from supporters of Vladimir Putin. He wants to be a world leader, you know, an energy giant. And that's interesting to me as well. So we have our adversaries, just like you said, our adversaries rooting for us to be environmentalists while they continue to do what's best for their nations. Hey, folks, when Mike Lindell first launched MyPillow, it was solely a solution for one problem: pillows. But with the dedication of his team, they've expanded their offerings to include hundreds of other products and to spread the word that they will not be part of cancel culture. No, they are hosting a $25 extravaganza, and it's going on now. Here's their current offer. Use promo code Carter, CARTER, at mypillow.com to get the sale price and free shipping on your order over $75. And remember, you're helping the Sara Carter Show as well. Every single thing you buy from MyPillow helps our show keep going on. Go to mypillow.com or call 800-685-7221 today to get the $25 extravaganza today. Be sure to use code Carter to get the sale price and free shipping on your order over $75. Call 800-685-7221 or go to mypillow.com, promo code Carter. Again, mypillow.com, promo code Carter. Let me ask you about our intelligence apparatus, because this is probably one of the most important subjects that I think that interests me the most, because of what happened over the last, I'm going to say 8 years now, 9 years, just with regards to President Trump. One of the biggest issues is the American people just do not trust their intelligence apparatus anymore. They don't trust law enforcement. They don't trust what's happening with the CIA. They don't trust what's happening, you know, and particularly the FBI, if we're talking about the FBI. Talk about America First policy when it comes to our intelligence apparatus. What can we do to rebuild our, I guess, the trust in the American people, and how do we do that after what's happened over the last year, from the Steele dossier to the intelligence chiefs signing a letter falsifying that this was that the laptop, you know, belonging to Hunter Biden was actually Russian disinformation. I mean, we have been lied to over and over again.
Well, putting the American people first in national security means national security agencies that are run effectively and ethically. And intelligence organizations that politicize intelligence are grossly inefficient and wasteful and spy on the American people and meddle in elections. Why are the American people paying for that? That's why we have a chapter by Sam Faddis. He's a very well-known former CIA operations officer, and he goes through chapter and verse the problems in the intelligence community, how we have to strip security clearances from people who meddle in elections, like the 51 signers of the Hunter Biden laptop letter, how we have to do enormous work to get politics out of analysis of intelligence. Because, Sarah, we have a situation now where the perception by many Republicans is that the intelligence community is simply no good. They can't trust what it produces. So when the day comes when a CI director or a director of national intelligence has a crucial piece of intelligence he or she needs a president to read, that president may not meet with them. Their trust in our intelligence community may have sank so low. So we need to address this on an urgent basis. There's a lot of good people in the intelligence community, but a lot of house cleaning has to be done, a lot of reforms, and we need to strip security clearances from a lot of people who used to be in the community.
Well, we never found out who was leaking on the president during President Trump's time in office when phone calls were being leaked. I mean, and information was coming out of the White House that was considered classified, and it was being used as a weapon against him in the media. That's very concerning to me. I know there was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Fred, because you may know this much better than I do. But didn't President Reagan, when he came into the White House, didn't he just kind of clean out the NSC and kind of put the people that he needed in there to work for him? I mean, the ones that he trusted. I mean, that's going to be very important in running a nation, is that as president, you have to be able to trust the people around you. You also have to be able to do your job. And that means working with people that are willing not to slow roll every idea or every action that you're trying to get accomplished during your term as president, but actually do the job with you. And what we saw during President Trump's tenure was that there were people within the apparatus that were slow rolling, spying. I mean, it was absolutely unbelievable. It was almost Banana Republic.
Yeah, it's hard to know where to start. The FISA process was misused to spy on members of the Trump campaign. Very sensitive National Security Agency reports were deliberately leaked to the media to harm members of the Trump campaign and then members of the Trump administration. Nobody was prosecuted for that. Those people should have went to prison. I don't know whether it was seriously investigated by intelligence agencies. There were so many other abuses of intelligence. So we have a chapter at the end of the book, and it supplements well the chapter on intelligence, that nothing we talk about in the book about promoting America First policies matter without good national security personnel. We talk about how we have to get these people, the challenges they have to deal with, the special challenges of working in a job that involves security clearances. That's part of AFPI's America First Transition Project. It's a huge operation we're doing to reform every government agency and bring in good people, not to politicize these agencies, but to run them efficiently and to tell the career officials they have to get politics out of their work. It's one of the most important things AFPI is doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. You know, that was something that when I have friends in the FBI, that was one of the very first things that they tell FBI agents in Quantico, that it has to be about the facts, that you can't play politics, that you're there to represent, this prestigious agency, this bureau that is supposed to have the trust of the American people, and rebuilding that is going to take time. I do believe, though, that America First policy can make that happen. But I only think, like Fred, as long as you get rid of those rotten apples, there's just too many rotten apples. If you can't get rid of them, move them to a building in Richmond, Virginia. Tell them that's the only thing I think you could do.
And one of the best examples of problems of politicization was revealed by John Ratcliffe after the 2020 election.
Right.
He wrote that there was an internal politicization ombudsman report on how analysts who were working on China and Russia deliberately skewed their analysis so they wouldn't say things that would help Trump win the election. This is an example of poor management. The environment that allowed that to happen should not have been there. Their managers should never allow that analysis to get out. But this is several levels of incompetent managers that encourage or tolerate our intelligence agencies being manipulated for political purposes. So when we look at these agencies, we need to have massive changes at multiple levels.
You know what I think, Fred? I don't think it's just incompetence. I truly believe that people are placed in those positions that are willing to, play ball with others. Like we saw that happen with Hillary Clinton and her campaign and the people she was working with. And then we find out, that, Perkins Coie had a little office within their, building that was connected to the FBI. And there was just too much, everybody was so cozy together that we couldn't break it. We couldn't get through the threads and see like, okay, who was talking to who and who directed who. We do know that the Clinton campaign paid for the Steele dossier. The Steele dossier was a lie. The Steele dossier was part of what John Brennan, Clapper, and our FBI had when they briefed President Trump on this outrageous lie to then leak it to the media. To me, it was more of a disinformation campaign, an intelligence campaign that was very dangerous. People should have been prosecuted because they lied about a duly elected president of these United States, and they targeted him on a global scale. And so for me, it was far beyond the incompetence. It was almost purposeful, and it was set up that way. And I still believe that. And I still believe that what you're doing to gut those agencies is the only way that we are going to regain our trust back. And let me ask you this before I go on to one more question. What is your greatest fear for our country? Because you are you had worked and given so much of your life, your entire career, to protecting this nation. You had such an astounding, and you still do, astounding career. You're such a great patriot. What is your worst fear if we don't clean these agencies out?
I think China is by far the most serious threat to our national security. It is a pervasive threat that you look at this book, China's mentioned in almost every chapter: Homeland Security, the Middle East, Ukraine. It's just amazing. And we really have to have a serious U.S. president and serious national security staff. And Biden has, I think, some of the worst national security staff in history to take on the threat from China on a comprehensive basis. We also have to find a way to fight the threat from China and also to lower tensions. And that's
how do we do that? How do we handle China?
Well,
do we do it
Trump
through trade policies?
Use a transactional approach. We're going to be tough with China, but we're also going to talk. Trump may have to go to Beijing to talk to President Xi, not to embarrass him, but to establish a dialogue so we can be tough with them, but we don't let the situation from spinning out of control. There's been very little diplomacy between the U.S. and China under Biden, and Biden hasn't talked to Putin since February of 2022. And that has allowed bad situations to get much worse, and it's just one of many signs of this administration's profound national security incompetence.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And we're watching China, and it's certainly the Chinese policy through the Belt and Road Initiative and spreading globally is, right here on our doorstep, You mentioned fentanyl, but also trade policy and trying to align itself with other nations like El Salvador and others, trying to gain their trust. And in Africa, with the use of the yuan. I mean, we're really going to face a very dangerous time for the United States if we don't handle China appropriately. I agree with you on that wholeheartedly. Chad Wolf's in your book too. I think Chad is so great. He was former acting DHS secretary, and he has a section in your book that talks about, besides building the wall, putting together an America First kind of administration to restore the horrific open borders policy that Biden has put into place through his administration. Talk a little bit about that.
National security is not just foreign threats, it's also homeland security. And the major threat is the deliberate failure of Joe Biden to defend our southern border. And you and I know he could fix this with a stroke of a pen with executive orders. And he refuses to do this because the Democratic Party, the far left, they want to flood our country with illegal immigrants. They're deliberately doing this. Biden won't turn this off. And think about the number of criminals and terrorists, Chinese intelligence agents, members of Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups. They are among the gotaways who are crossing the border. You really need to read Chad Wolf's chapter. He talks about this in depth. He is the number one expert on this issue, and it is going to be one of the most important America First national security tasks of a new president.
How serious of a threat are we facing? I talk to law enforcement officials all the time, whether it's Border Patrol or FBI. How serious of a threat are we facing because of that border being wide open for the last 4 years?
Well, there was this terrorist attack by terrorists from Afghanistan against Moscow a couple months ago.
Right.
It was just 5 guys, and they killed hundreds of people. They set the location of Moscow, the theater, on fire. Right. Those guys could have easily made it into the United States. And I'm really worried that there could be terrorist cells, ISIS cells, Al-Qaeda cells in the United States right now because Biden refuses to secure the southern border. And what might they do at a time of their choosing?
Yeah, and like you said, they've been hiding. Obviously, the drug cartels and the trafficking organizations know how to get people into this country for the right amount of money. They can hide anyone in almost anything, and we won't even know that they're a getaway. We won't even see their prints. They'll come in a truck. They'll do, especially with the way the border has been so unmanned, and I think it ruins the morale of our law enforcement agents when they're left to handle such an enormous job and the administration could care less about them. So this really is not just about handling foreign policy, but it's about everything that makes our nation worth living in. It's right down to the cop on the street that is patrolling and is the first responder to any kind of incident that could possibly happen, or a regular American who may see something out of place. I mean, we've been really left so vulnerable. I almost feel as if the Trojan horse is already here and we just don't know it.
The Mexican president thinks Joe Biden is a joke. You may remember a couple of months ago, he said, well, maybe we'll make an offer to cut illegal immigration, but you have to first improve your relations with Cuba and Venezuela. The idea that a Mexican president would propose something so absurd shows how little respect he has for Joe Biden. We need a president who the Mexican president fears and knows there will be dramatic action by the United States against Mexico if the stream of illegal immigrants is not stopped. If Mexico doesn't stop it, I think our next president will.
Oh, thank you so much, Fred. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. Where can we get the book? Let everybody know. And I would love to have you back on.
It's great to be on. It's available on Amazon.com. If you go to our website, AmericaFirstPolicy.com, you can check out the links to the book and to our other analysis.
Folks, I want you to go to AmericaFirstPolicy.com. That's AmericaFirstPolicy.com or Amazon and get the book. It's an America First approach to U.S. national security. It's going to not only inform you, but it's going to give you the layout. We are part of the government. We are, we're the boss, right? They work for us. And if you want a government that works for you and does the right thing, get the book, educate yourself, and then get out and vote. Thank you so much, Fred, for being a part of the show.
Hey, Sara, good to be here.
Thank you, Fred. I look forward to having you back on the show, talk more in depth about our America First policies. I know all of you out there love these guests, and this is where it all happens, folks. Right here, I will bring you the most important guests with the background. It's like inside baseball, right? Inside knowledge. You're going to get a back seat as to what's happening in our country. Just what do you need to do? You need to subscribe to the Sara Carter Show on your favorite podcast app. It helps us bring on all these fantastic folks, and it really gives us a boost in our algorithm. That's how I can do this. I can bring these guests on. I can keep these podcasts coming as long as you subscribe and download the podcast app. If you're watching on Rumble or YouTube, give us a like and a follow as well. Thank you. You mean so much to me. Believe it or not, you are part of my family, and I hope that I am part of yours. Follow me on Truth at Sara Carter Official, on X at Sara Carter DC, and on Instagram at SCarterDC. God bless you. God bless our great nation. God bless the America First Policy Institute, and God bless the great state of Texas.